Whenever you hear people say, I'm breaking generational curses, it sounds a little like they're trying to shatter something that was once whole. They're talking about patterns of behaviors, traumas, and circumstances passed down through families, and more often than not, they're actually passed down without anyone actually ever realizing it. But maybe maybe you're not breaking anything. Maybe you're starting something that's never actually existed before. Because how do you break what was built from survival? You know? How do you undo what your ancestors did just to make sure you could even be here? You cannot break generations of curses, but you can be a generational starter. Tonight's episode is titled The Truth About Generational Curses and Why You Can't Break Them. This is Halftime Girl. So, when I think about what that really means to be a generational starter, I don't know. I think about Coach Deion Sanders. And when it comes to Deion Sanders, he didn't just play the game. He shifted it. From Fort Myers to Florida State to the NFL, he kind of learned early that sometimes you have to create the blueprint that doesn't exist. But what makes his story powerful, it isn't just his success, it's how he's rewriting legacy through his sons. Now, you see, Dion built from survival, from proving, from having to be prime time in order to be seen. But his sons, they don't have to perform to belong. You know, they get to be themselves out loud. They get to lead with peace, with faith and purpose because their father already fought the battles that taught them that they could. And that right there is what generational starting looks like. Not breaking a curse, but beginning a new consciousness. When you've done enough healing that your children don't have to unlearn you, they get to expand on you. And Dion didn't just give them opportunity, he gave them identity. And that in itself is a whole different kind of wealth. Now, what they do with it when they've got it is completely up to them and them alone. Shador should have been part of the first round of draft picks, in my personal opinion. He's not. You know, he went down to the fifth round. The Browns got him, and right now he's working to try to see some time on the field as their current backup quarterback. But, you know, he's building off of that legacy. With Dion's other son, Shiloh, I mean, Shiloh was on the practice squad for the Buccaneers. Didn't really work out too well. But he still has his own thing going on. You know, he has his brand deals. He's got his YouTube content. I think I heard that he signed with an agency to do some modeling and acting. But the point of the matter is they're expanding and they're building for their children. And it just, you know, I mean, for me personally, my mom didn't have the easiest childhood. And on top of it, you know, she had me at the age of 17 going on 18. So that didn't really make matters any easier. But she fought with all of her might just to make sure that I had everything I needed growing up. And I think I was about 5 or 6 when we moved from Massachusetts. And the town that we moved to, it had an amazing education system. There's art programs at the high school. It's really diverse. And it just really helped me prepare for the real world. And none of that would have been available to me had it not been for a 17-year-old deciding to give their child opportunities that weren't allotted to her. You know, for a while, I kind of wondered about how I could break certain generational curses that have plagued my family. And generational curses are different for everybody. Yours could be emotional repression, you know? Like families who just don't talk about their feelings or grief or mental health or, you know, if there's any any kind of issues, they're kind of just like swept under the rug rather than actually being discussed. Or it could be the fear of success or even the fear of rest. Because when you finally start to rest, it feels unsafe or like you're not really deserving of it. Or, being fearful of being successful, you're actually afraid that if you rise too high, something will go wrong. Or worse, you'll fail. And generationally, it's passed down through families where survival was the goal, not expansion. Or, sometimes you'll sabotage opportunities when they start to align for you. And you overwork or overprove just because peace feels so foreign to you. Because it's not the fear of failure at this point. It's the unfamiliarity of freedom. And I do the same thing. I tend to over curate. I kind of always want things to land perfectly before I actually put it out into the world. So I second guess, I rework, polish, hesitate. When in reality, my first raw idea was more than likely already dope to begin with. And that's my generational curse to bear. But that's the thing about being a generational starter. It's not about fixing every broken piece in your family's story. It's about recognizing what was missing and then deciding to build it. Starters don't carry shame for what came before them, they carry awareness. They honor the people who built from survival while keeping themselves and giving themselves, I should say, permission to build from peace. And sometimes, that means we're training your body to understand that freedom isn't danger, that rest isn't laziness. Uh, for me, I grew up in a Caribbean household, so anytime I rested, it was always deemed that I was being lazy. So the thought process was always to make sure that I wasn't being deemed as lazy. That joy doesn't have to be earned. Being a generational starter isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's it's little things like catching yourself when you start repeating an old pattern and choosing that softer, freer response instead. So, if you're listening and you're wondering, okay, how do I actually do that? Here's how I see it: the 3 shifts of a generational starter. 1. Recognize what you inherited: the beliefs, the behaviors, the emotions that feel like yours but probably aren't. Recognize that. 2. Reframe it. Instead of labeling everything as toxic or broken, ask yourself what it was trying to protect. What did that pattern make possible at that time? 3. Rebuild from awareness. Choose differently. Not out of rebellion, but out of restoration. Because you're not here to break what your family built. You're here to build what they couldn't. You're not a curse breaker. You're a starter. The first to choose peace. The first to choose purpose. The first to choose you. You are back to being who you were always meant to be. Free of all your roles, free of all the masks, all of the limits that were set upon you. And of course, there's still that little voice that whispers, but wait. That's your comfort zone, making one last plea for attention. The real magic happens when you set out to start despite the whisper. So let the whisper come along for the ride. But it doesn't get to drive. You do. Because that's what halftime really is about. It's that pause between who you've been and who you're becoming. It's a space where you look at everything that you've inherited, the blessings, the burdens, the blueprints, and you decide what's worth carrying forward. You're not here to erase your history. You're here to evolve it. You are the new beginning, the generational starter. And That's your legacy. Now, before we wrap up, it's time for halftime huddles, where I read your halftime moments, the real stories and reflections that are reminding us that none of us are doing this alone. Because every single one of us is working through our own halftime, learning, healing, and starting again. I promised that there's going to be no names. I'm not going to say anyone's names and anything unless I'm actually given permission to. And I do appreciate the couple of people who wrote in. I only chose two. I don't want to do too many to start off with, but I told you guys I would read these once I got them. I chose two different ones, just to see how you guys are feeling and how you guys are reacting to the episode so far. So we're gonna read listener letter number 1. I just finished episode 3, and that part where you said you are your own worst enemy, but not in a harsh way. More like realizing you'd been holding yourself back without even knowing it. Yeah, that one got me. I think I've been doing the same thing. Not even because I wanted to, but because it felt safer to stay small. Felt that. Like if I didn't try too hard, I couldn't really fail. I actually wrote down what you said about shedding the roles we play to fit in. I've been thinking about who I'd be if I'd stopped trying to earn peace and just let myself have it. It's weird how something so simple can sound so impossible at first. Anyway, thank you for saying it out loud. Sometimes hearing someone else put words to the things I only think in silence makes me feel less crazy, you know? Well, I definitely know what you mean. That's actually a little bit of the reason as to why I started this podcast in the first place, because I always thought these things and would write them in my journals and kind of felt like, damn, like I felt so bottled up, and I felt like I needed an outlet to let it out. So yes, you definitely aren't crazy. I'm happy to put words to everything that you think. That actually touched me a little bit there. I'm happy to hear that, you know, my words are hitting you in that way. But even where you yourself just said it felt safer to stay small. I think we all might feel like that sometimes, where it's easier and more comfortable to stay in the little four corners that we have and put together for ourselves, where we're comfortable and safe, and to actually have to leave that area, it's nerve-wracking. But yeah, it's something that we're all going through together. You gotta leave those four corners sometimes, because the world's a pretty big doggone place, and you know, to experience it all, it'd be an amazing thing. So don't give up on that. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so I have one more I'm gonna share. Listener letter number 2. Okay, so I wasn't gonna write in. Okay, well, first off, I'm glad you did, so thank you. But I listened to Dreamcatchers twice. That opening line got me right away. You ever get so close to a dream that it actually starts to scare you? Yeah, that's me right now. Like word for word, I keep questioning if I'm ready. You said when you had I'm sorry, I might be misreading this. You said when your dream is close to enough to grab, you've got to trust that your hands are strong enough to hold it. That hit deep. I think I've been so used to surviving that I don't really know how to receive good things without waiting for the other shoe to drop. But this episode made me stop and ask myself, what if it does work? What if I am ready? Anyway, I just wanted to say thank you. I really needed that reminder. You're absolutely welcome. I'm always here to give any reminders that you need. But yeah, it's of course you're gonna second guess. You're gonna ask those questions. You're gonna have those moments where you feel like, am I ready? But you never know unless you just do it. There's never going to be the perfect time. The perfect time is now. If you have to sit there and ask yourself, well, is this my time? Make it your time right then and there. So I hope you realize and trust that your hands are strong enough to hold it. But it takes the faith of a mustard seed. You know, you got to actually have that faith and hold that faith throughout the entire longevity of the timeline of whatever you're working on. But if you don't have faith in yourself, who else is going to have faith in you? I mean, God will, but you gotta have that same faith in yourself too. That's definitely really important. And thank you for writing in. I appreciate it. Um, if you guys want to share any of your own halftime moments, make sure you send them in. You can DM me on IG, shoot me an email at halftimegirlpodcast@gmail.com. Some of you have been texting me yours, and I love that. But it would be so much easier if you can send them to the actual socials, just so I can kind of keep a more updated viewpoint of them all. And also, I'm terrible at text messages, but I love that I'm hearing from you all. Your stories remind me why this podcast exists. Until next time, Halftime Girl out.